Warning, this guide features weak 1 strats for the fight Arcadion M3S. Better strats can and will be discovered if they haven't already, so be mindful. Hi guys, and welcome to a Hector lecture guide to the fight Arcadion M3S. This is Brute Bomber. You're going to need clock spots for this fight. I recommend standard clock spots. For partners, I do color-coded with tank healers rotating counterclockwise, but if you prefer supports rotating clockwise, just adjust your waymarks. For one mechanic, you're going to need to change up your partners. For this, have tanks partnered with melees, healers partnered with ranged. For the same mechanic, you're going to need some different spread positions. Finally, for one mechanic near the end of the fight, you're going to want to change up your standard clock spots because we're going to be directly on our waymarks. For this, just have your melees swap with your healers. The fight begins with Brutal Impact. This is a raid-wide that's going to hit 4 times initially. This is followed with Knuckle Sandwich. This targets the top player in aggro with a shared tank buster. This also hits 4 times initially. We now get either Octuple Lariat or Quadruple Lariat. Octuple Lariat means that you're going to have to spread at the end. Quadruple means that you're going to have to be in partners at the end. Whichever one you get, in this case the spread first, for this initial Lariat you're always going to have to be out of the boss as well. This is slightly more than max melee. For Quadruple Lariat, which is pairs, same idea, but rotate to be with your partner. Note that these are very thin conal cleaves on the partner, so you need to be tightly stacked with them. Next up is going to be a random dive mechanic, either Octoboom, which involves spreads at the end, or Quadroboom, which involves pairs at the end. For either of these, this initial one is going to be a proximity away from wherever the boss is facing. The boss will face towards a random cardinal, and you need to go max melee at least behind the boss on the other side. Wait for the proximity to go out, and then tanks and melees can gap close in and do either the spreads or partners as we've discussed before. If it was Quadroboom dive, exact same idea, but partner up. We get another Brutal Impact, 4 hits. And then you want to pre-position for this next mechanic, Barbarous Barrage. I have the tanks and melees northwest, the healers in range southeast. When the cast finishes, you get 6 towers spawning. These will either be on the north and south wall, or the east and west wall, but the pattern is the same each time. There will always be a 4-person tower in the middle of each set, signified by the 4 orbs rotating around it. And on either side is a 2-person tower. To resolve this, have our groups just rotate into the nearest 4-person tower, and they need to position so Group 1 can get knocked back diagonally left, Group 2 diagonally right. In this next tower, position to get knocked back towards middle. You'll have seen the bosses jump towards a random intercardinal. Immediately soak the 8-person tower in the middle while getting knocked back behind the boss, who will always cast Murderous Mist. Murderous Mist is a 270-degree cleave, just like in normal mode. You can also do this same mechanic using knockback immunity. For this, it's the same basic idea. You still get in the same first tower, but the difference is that instead of getting knocked diagonally, you're going to pop knockback immunity just before the first tower hits, and simply walk into the next tower. Group 1 left, Group 2 right facing the boss. If you timed it well, you'll also knockback immune this one, but it doesn't matter if you do, just position so you'll still get knocked back towards mid. And finally, you don't want this one to be knockback immune because you'll be too slow to get behind the boss. Either way is perfectly fine, but the 2 different strategies are not compatible with each other, so your group needs to pick one. After this mechanic, the boss will turn around and cast Doping Draft. They'll give themselves a Dangerously Doped buff, meaning they'll do more damage, and some of their mechanics are swapped for the rest of the fight. We're now going to get a random Lariat, either Octuple or Quadruple, but something's different. This time, if you look at the boss's arms when they're raised, there's a fiery effect around them. Whenever you see the fiery effect, it means the mechanic has been reversed. Instead of an out, this Lariat will be an in. Make sure that you're in, and also either resolving the spread or pairs, depending on if the cast is Octuple or Quadruple. We now get another Boom Dive, but once again, boss's arms are on fire, meaning that this is going to be the opposite. Instead of a proximity, there's going to be a knockback from where the boss is facing. So position where the boss is facing and get prepared to get knocked back. You can knockback immune this. However, if you use knockback immunity on the towers, it will not be back for this mechanic. Melees and tanks should try to time their gap closers, so as soon as they get knocked back, they immediately gap close in, or make sure they're knockback immune like main tank is here. Afterwards, resolve the pairs or spreads the same way we did before. We get a brutal impact, and because the boss is buffed, this will hit 6 times now. We get a knuckle sandwich, and this will also hit 6 times. Next up, the boss will cast Tag Team and spawn clones, 2 clones on adjacent cardinals. Chain Deathmatch is going to be cast and chain every player to one of the 2 clones. You'll only be able to see your chain. I'm going to show this from main tank's perspective. So main tank is chained to the clone on the right, and at the end of the cast, the chain disappears, but you have a chain deathmatch debuff. You cleanse this by getting hit by the clone that you were just chained to. You want to fail their mechanic. Both of the clones are going to start to wind up a lariat combo. They will always go out the way that they're showing, and they will always come back with the reverse cleave. To dodge this really simply, stand perfectly middle, look at the clone you were not chained to, move directly left to right, dodging their attack only. You can stop on the nearest waymark. You're now safe, you've done it. If every player does this, if I just lay over the telegraphs here, you can see that you're getting hit by one clone, the one that you were chained to, but you're dodging the other one perfectly every time because these attacks will also hit the middle in addition to the side that they're cleaving. Identify where the safe spot will be when the clones flip back around. This will always be whichever corner is being hit twice, in this case the 4 corner. If all of the players have done the mechanic correctly, it's pretty easy to see just from where everyone stood because everyone's going to be diagonally opposite the safe corner. Wait for the first cleaves to go out, and then immediately run over towards the safe corner to dodge both of the second cleaves. You only want to get hit by your chain clone the first time. This will be followed by a random lariat. You need to look both at the cast for quadruple or octuple, and also at the boss's arms for either are they on fire or not. We get another brutal impact for 6 hits, and then the boss will cast Final Fusedown. When the cast finishes, you'll see that we get the pattern of long fuse and short fuse bombs like we had in normal mode, but also all players have either a long fuse or a short fuse. These are role-based, so right now DPS have all short fuses and tank healers have all long fuses. The short fuse players are going to explode at the same time as the short fuse bombs, so they're going to need to spread away from the party first, and they're all going to look for a long fuse bomb to hide on. To do this in a simple pattern, if you have pre-positioned like I show here, simply have your healer arranged with a short fuse go out at the corner they're already next to. Northeast and southwest will always be safe spots first. Have your melees, or tanks, whichever one has the short fuse, slide across to the nearest long fuse bomb. For all of the players with the long fuses, they're going to hide middle, and the safe spot you're looking for is going to be this line here, slightly between the 2 long fuse bombs. Tanks and melees trying to get your uptime, you might want to disengage just ever so slightly so you don't clip someone middle, though there is enough room at max melee, just barely. Here's the telegraph pattern for the bombs, and I'll pause it here so you can see it clearly. And all short fuse players and short fuse bombs will explode. We now need to dodge for the second set of fuses. For this, have your healers arranged with long fuses go out, and they're going to always go out with group 1 going to the northwest corner, group 2 going out to the southeast corner. Your tanks just glide over towards whichever free space in melee was near where they initially started. So group 1 northwest, group 2 southeast. All of the players that have already exploded are now going to do the same thing as before. They're going to hide middle, and they're going to be slightly near the new players that are about to explode. Here's the telegraph for the second attack. And if you've done it like this, you're all safe. This works because there's only actually 2 patterns for the bombs. It can either look like this, or this. Since northeast and southwest are always safe first, have your short caster always go out to fixed positions for that. Your long caster can similarly have fixed positions. The only people that have to adjust are tanks and melees, and if you have your main tank and M1 prioritized northwest, and off tank and M2 southeast, figuring out where you go is pretty easy. The boss will now cast a random dive, and then we get Fusefield. When the cast finishes, all players are going to be given either a short timer debuff like the tank healers have, or a long timer debuff like the DPS have. You'll also see that 8 fuses have spawned around the boss, and they are 4 short, 4 long. We need to get a short timer player on a short fuse, and a long timer player on a long fuse. To do this in an orderly manner, you should have a priority system. One that works well is to just have your groups look north and then clockwise, going in the order main tank, off tank, H1, H2, and same for DPS, M1, M2, R1, R2. If you're a healer and you don't want to count 4 fuses, you can just think of it like this instead. This is the same priority as everyone looking north clockwise, and it means less counting of fuses. If DPS also use the same priority, it works out because DPS and supports will never be looking for the same type of fuse. If everyone follows this, they can adjust onto a safe fuse. The boss will cast Barbarian Flame. You'll get some sparks, The text, "The sinister sparks begin to move," and from this point onwards, the middle is now dangerous. Walking in it will give you a dot, likely gonna kill you. We now need to get rid of these sparks one at a time. We're going to cleanse short timers first, and to cleanse it, a player just needs to walk onto the spark. That'll put the spark out, and cleanse the debuff, and let out a raid wide. We go in the order main tank, off tank, H1, H2. Main tank cleanses theirs, and raid wide damage goes out. There's a 2-second vuln, wait for that to fall off, and for everyone to get health, and then off tank should go out. And continue this, H1, and then H2. Once all of the short fuses have been dealt with, we now have the long timer players go out. M1, M2, R1, R2. Remember to only go out when both the vuln has fallen off and the party has enough health to survive. This will be followed with a 6-hit knuckle sandwich, and then the boss will turn around and cast another doping draft. It'll get a second stack of dangerously dope, and we'll also get this yellow buff here. This will make the boss slightly larger in size, and then cast Octoboom Bombarian Special or Quadroboom Bombarian Special. Each one is either just loading spreads or pairs for the very end. Otherwise, the special is exactly the same. When the cast finishes, you'll get 1 raid wide, 2 raid wides, spinning kick 3rd raid wide, 4th raid wide, get out, 5th raid wide, and out that's quite fast. Get all the way inside the boss's hitbox, 1 more raid wide, and then the boss is going to jump away, and you need to position just outside of this blue knockback circle, prepared to get knocked back into your corner. If it spreads, immediately spread. When spreading in, simply have your tanks or melees go in, your healer and range stay out, and if you are 2 melees or 2 range, then go tank healer left, DPS right. If it was Quadroboom, it's the exact same thing, but be with your partner instead. Fuses of Fury is next, and this will spawn the same bomb pattern that we saw before. Go to the middle safe spot between the long fuse bombs. The boss will cast Tag Team again, and we get 2 clones. And then Chain Deathmatch is going to chain you not only to a clone, but also always to the boss as well. While this is happening, the fusers are ignited. It just means we're going to have to dodge the bomb shortly. The first bombs will explode, and just slide across to the safe side. And now, both clones are going to prepare a Lariat combo, and the boss is casting Murderous Mist. We can deal with this almost identically to how we did the first one. Look at the clone that you were not chained to. Dodge that attack. Some of the time, you're already safe, but in this case, main tank is unfortunately not getting hit by the boss, and because they were chained to the boss, they need to get hit by them. They must be in this Murderous Mist attack. To deal with this, you now need to look at the clone you were chained to, and you're going to adjust to the intercardinal on the fiery armed side. As long as you're past these dots on the ground, you're far enough. Identify the safe corner for afterwards. You'll get hit by both the boss and the clone that you were chained to, cleansing both of your debuffs, and then can immediately sprint into the safe corner. The boss will cast a random dive, and then we get a brutal impact that will now hit for 8 times. Heavy mitigation is required, or some spot heals throughout. This is followed with a 8-hit knuckle sandwich. I recommend always invulning these 8-hit ones. There's only 2 of them. We now get Fuse or Foe. All players will get either a short or long fuse on their head, just like before, but we could ignore that for now. The boss is going to cast Infernal Spin, and is going to telegraph a cone that is going to spin and rotate in one direction, while also 2 ground AoEs appear. Position yourself safe from the initial attacks, and this dodge is going to be quite simple. We dodge into one of the ground AoEs next to where the cone is spinning. We then dodge middle, and then we go to our waymark. So we wait for the initial AoE to go off, and you'll see that it's replaced with a donut that we dodge into. After the 5th cleave of the boss, the donuts explode, and we're going to dodge middle, making sure that we don't walk into a place where the boss is going to cleave. The boss only cleaves each direction once, so as long as you get onto the boss's backside, you're safe for the rest of this. Now, the fuses are ignited, meaning that players are about to explode. You don't care if you're short or long fuse. Everybody goes out to their waymarks, and to keep up time, remember that melee should be swapped with healers for this mechanic. The first set will explode, and then still stay near to your waymark, and the second set will explode. When that's done, very quickly afterwards, the boss is going to cast a random lariat, so get into your clock spots or partners depending on the cast, and look for the in or out tell. The boss will cast a Brutal Impact Raid Wide for 8 hits. And now we get another Barbarous Barrage. Pre-position like we did before, and we resolve this almost identically. Take the first towers the same way that you did, but this time instead of the boss jumping to an intercardinal, they jump to a cardinal. And as you go middle, look at the boss because they're going to be preparing a Lariat combo. Go middle and ride the knockback to a corner on the safe side. Going just to the cardinal will get you killed because the knockback's too long. Wait for the Lariat combo to go off, and then look at the boss. This does not have to be reversed, just like a normal bode. This can be the Jabate, so here you're going back to the original safe side. There's a Knuckle Sandwich Tank Buster. Preferably have your off-tank have aggro here so they can invuln it. And then we get one more Doping Draft. The boss gets buffed one more time, grows in size, and casts Special Bombarian Special. Just like before, we get 1 Raid Wide, 2 Raid Wide, Spinning Kick 3rd Raid Wide, 4th Raid Wide, out for the 5th Raid Wide, in with 1 more Raid Wide, and then you better hope that the boss is dead by now, because if not, they'll become untargetable, run to the edge of the arena, and from the top rope, jump down with a belly flop. That means it's game over. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.